Back in 1999, 4 people from Microsoft's DirectX engineering team, Kevin Backus, Seamus Blackley, Ted Hayes, and the appointed leader Otto Berkes, teamed together to try and design the next best video game console. The first Xbox console was released on November 15, 2001 in the US, and other countries like Australia got it in 2002. The console met with success, and while some may argue that one is better than the other, both seem to be good consoles in their own way. I think it all comes down to preference and what exclusive games you prefer. Throughout the years, many iconic games have been released for the Xbox, of course, but that also means a lot get filed away and forgotten about, or don't even get fully announced. Today, I'll cover 25 lost Xbox games. Now, this one is great for spooky season, and spooky season is my favorite. So, let's talk about Pumpkin Man. Pumpkin Man was a cancelled Halloween-inspired third-person shooter that was being developed by Metro 3D and Red Purple Game Technology for the Xbox and PC. Joseph Morici. If it's not Morici, I'm really sorry. The senior vice president of sales at Metro 3D at the time said about the game, "Diversifying our Xbox lineup, Pumpkin Man is a real treat to introduce to Xbox enthusiasts. In partnership with Red Purple Game Technology, developers of this terrific title, Metro 3D is anxious to unleash what is sure to be a timeless Halloween favorite among gamers of all ages." You would play as Joshua, trying to open Hell's Gates to release some spicy demons while Halloween takes place. Some blogs had written about the game, and it was even shown at E3 2003. According to some magazines like Sci Illustrated and Gaming Nexus, Halloween is the most important day. Halloween acts like a night where evil spirits can walk the earth for a day while using some crystal artifact. Unfortunately, the gates of hell are locked, and Clown, the leader, has to figure out how to reopen them. The main character, Joshua, dies accidentally and is sent to hell, but he can't seem to forget the time that someone said, and I quote, "Joshua will definitely become a hero. I want to be his bride on that day." Now with an incentive, Joshua sets off on a journey to help Clown and save the day. There was also a 4-player mode which seemed ambitious at the time, but that didn't take away from the story mode experience. The magazines I mentioned previously also reported that there were 40 multiplayer levels, 20 single-player levels, 25 different enemies, and 13 different weapons. Pumpkin Man was cancelled when Metro 3D filed for bankruptcy in 2004, which is pretty disheartening. When I was looking at more about them, all of the games I've never even heard of. The most popular seem to be Bubble Bobble from 1985. So they may have been struggling until their eventual closure, but I'm not sure. There really isn't a lot of information about them out there. However, things changed in July of 2021 when user 2DMe posted on r/original Xbox. A couple of years ago, I started buying new and sealed retro games from China and Taiwan, and reselling them on eBay UK. One day I came across a big box PC game and the artwork looked really good and it caught my attention, but I couldn't find any info about the game anywhere, despite being quite well versed in the art of advanced Google search syntax. The game was priced at 4,000 NTD, which is about $144 US. So I didn't immediately buy it and spent 2 or 3 weeks trying to find out what game it was. After a few weeks of sporadically searching, I came across Matched and discovered that the game was in fact a planned game for the original Xbox. I have the complete game files on 3 discs, but I don't have them ripped to my PC at the moment, so I thought I'd upload the demo first. Eventually, the demo and other game files were uploaded to archive.org, but pretty much all of the files were in Chinese. It's really a shame that this game was never released. They seem to be pretty far in development, as we have videos about it, and even the ending. But I won't spoil it here and leave it to y'all to find out. While the original Zombies Ate My Neighbors video game was not a huge success, it had praise for its graphics and gameplay for the time it came out in 1993. It's developed by LucasArts and then published by Konami for the Sega Genesis and Super NES consoles. In the game, you can play as Zeke or Julie trying to rescue their neighbors from a zombie invasion with a variety of weapons. A sequel called Ghoul Patrol came a year later, but most thought it was a completely different game and it was not well received. A true sequel for the aforementioned game was pitched for the Xbox and PlayStation 2, but it never escaped the development stage. It didn't even get officially announced, but Daniel Ibertson of Slope's Game Room was able to get some screenshots of the game after getting in touch with one of the developers. That seemed to be the extent of their conversation though, as Daniel said that an interview was planned, but they lost contact. In 2011, they even had a film planned for the series, with John Darko set to direct, him being mostly known for working with James Wan on Insidious. At the time of the announcement, it seemed like licensing talks were still happening, and we didn't hear much of anything about the film until September 28, 2013. When I was trying to find out what happened to this film, I came across a Daily Dead article that states, "It's been a while since we've heard anything about the movie version of Zombies Ate My Neighbors, but it looks like the project is alive and well. It's been rumored that the project has moved into the hands of Lucasfilm and Disney, after being associated with LucasArts prior to the company's acquisition. When we reported on the project back in 2011, John Darko had written the screenplay, and he's still on board as a writer and producer. Here's what we were told by him about the movie's story. Zombies Ate My Neighbors is set in modern day, and will be centered around two high school buddies on the verge of graduation. Here, you'll have the classic John Hughes-esque coming-of-age story. We tried to focus more on the aspirations of our characters and what happens to them when adulthood sets in. You gotta think about college, a career, the people that you'll probably never see again, first loves, all of that. Then things get messy on the eve of this huge graduation block party, and these kids sort of get to live out their secret ambitions of becoming adventurers by becoming the unlikely heroes of the story. We kept the mayhem contained to a small neighborhood, but as for the questions regarding Zeke, Julie, and gigantic babies, and etc., think about what happens when a small virus goes global, and how the rest of the world would react to that. This story predates the events from the video game, so Zeke and Julie are not the main focus this time around, but they will appear in it. The question I get asked the most is, will Zeke and Julie be in the movie, and what about the gigantic baby? All I can say is, yes. Well, kind of. Zeke and Julie will make an appearance, but the gigantic baby will have to wait for a sequel. You can't really throw the kitchen sink at audiences without a plausible origin story. The wackiness of the video game was something I loved, but turning all that into something watchable, and more importantly something we can understand and care about, took some careful scripting. I wasn't able to find anything after this, so this movie might also be considered lost media, which is kind of sad. Around 2003 and 2004, another Indiana Jones game was being worked on by the now defunct The Collective, who are now known as Double Helix, who are also closed down, after the release of Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb. CG Society was able to get some info from a developer in 2008. They said, "So, this image is 5 years old, low-poly real-time model created for a project that could have been. No photos were used in the creation of textures, and the render was not retouched. Hoping to work on another game, we did some R&D for a possible sequel. Now, polished character models were created, and the Indiana Jones model completely redone. There was an amazing prototype that was up and running with updated gameplay, but unfortunately this project never happened. Probably could have been the greatest indie game ever. Unfortunately, due to things out of the hands of the studio and surprisingly even the publisher, nothing came about. Some gameplay footage was also found on a showreel, which was thankfully preserved by Indiana Jones Brazil. The footage had Indy and Sadapo running through the scenery that was very reminiscent of Raiders of the Lost Ark, and had gameplay similar to Emperor's Tomb. A now shut down gaming website known as 1UP released some information as well. They didn't know why the game was never released, but it was going to have the whole Hovito Temple with the rolling boulder, one of the most iconic things from the Indiana Jones franchise. It sounded like the people developing were very passionate about it, and the photos and gameplay looked pretty good, so it's a shame it was never released. Now, while I believe H.P. Lovecraft is a despicable human being and doesn't deserve the credit he gets, I'm gonna talk about him a couple times in this video, so fair warning. And this game is gonna be a different spin on his writing. Delta Green is a cancelled strategic horror game being developed by Flying Lab Software from 2001 to 2003. This company is also behind Rails of America and Pirates of the Burning Sea. Delta Green is set in modern times, working under a secret government group sharing the same name to handle paranormal anomalies. The developers worked together with Dennis Dittwiller, Adam Scott Glancy, and John Scott Tynes, who were responsible for the creation of the tabletop game that the Flying Lab was using as inspiration. They crafted new stories that'd be adapted into the tabletop game after Delta Green released. Initially, the game was going to have an XCOM feel with an isometric camera angle, but they decided to go with a third-person angle with each character on your team having some form of autonomy, and things taking place in real time. To keep it as close to the Lovecraftian Cthulhu vibe as possible, the horror elements eased you into the scarier things, making you mostly encounter people driven mad by demons rather than large creatures you needed to dispatch. The setting did the same, starting you out in subway stations and then slowly transitioning you into more strange locations, like the Deep Ones or a base on the moon. The game was quite ambitious, so they needed the foundation behind it to make it possible. The developers decided to use a modified Lithtech Jupyter engine made by Monolith to make their high-fidelity models possible. They had a technique that seemed to work well for them, starting with 300,000 polygon models that would be simplified back down to 3,000 polygons while keeping the lighting the same, allowing them to have incredibly detailed characters. Tynes, one of the previously mentioned creators of the tabletop game, gave it praise for how realistic it looked. Flying Labs was aiming for a 2003 release, and it was exciting when Microsoft showed interest in the game, but they would end up backing out for unknown reasons, which seemed to start the snowball effect of Flying Labs' downfall. While they managed to release their MMO Pirates of the Burning Sea in 2008, they closed down in 2012, and another company, Vision Online Games, had to take over. While we will most likely never see a release for Delta Green, we do have some images and gameplay footage to know that it existed. Senji no Damaimochi, or Battlefield Home Delivery, is described as a poetic pizza delivery game in development by Microsoft Studios Japan from 2002 to 2003. The idea for the game came from Gabin Ito, mostly known for his work with Proper the Rapper. There isn't a lot of information out there about the game at all, but the character did confirm it was a pizza delivery game. The main character, Fran-chan, would have had to traverse the city to complete deliveries while avoiding obstacles and meeting new people. Promotional footage showed a panda, but Ito said that it wouldn't be in the game, nor would the battlefield. While this game is definitely unique, it wound up cancelled and I couldn't find a reason why. But we do have some footage that was shown at Game Show and some stills. Now this one might be slightly controversial. I'm not sure. Y'all will have to tell me how you feel about this one. Anyways, one of the launch games planned for the Xbox was XGirl, a girlfriend simulator. It was in development by Angel Studios in 2000. It's not known if voice commands could be used in XGirl, or if it was closer to something like The Sims or other simulation games. XGirl never had an official announcement, and it seems like we only have one image to prove it existed, and that was included on some resumes for people who worked at Angel Studios at the time. Michael Limber, the chief creative officer of Angel Studios, had this on his old website. Interactive test application from Microsoft for the launch of the Xbox. Kind of an interactive girlfriend project, XGirl had naturally engaging facial animations and reacted to various controller inputs. Unseen64 did try to talk to former employees for comment on the cancelled project, but they never had any responses. They also thought the XGirl may have been considered too controversial at the time, and that led to its cancellation. One interesting thing though, Angel Studios was bought out in 2003 by Take-Two and changed into Rockstar San Diego. And I'm sure most of us know who Rockstar is and what iconic games they have released. And by the way, I'm obsessed with Red Dead Redemption 2. If anyone wants to know what my favorite Rockstar game is, Red Dead Redemption 2. Which even that has like kind of lost media attached, like 5 hours of deleted content. As I was scrolling through Unseen64 looking for topics for this video, I came across CZ. There is literally no information about it. It could be a first-person or a third-person shooter with sci-fi elements. I think it looks like something inspired by Halo, but it could have been even before Halo came out. I really don't know. All we seem to have is some images, with the file name CZ. And if anyone watching this video knows anything about this project, please refer to the Unseen64 post, which I can leave linked down below. It'd be really cool if we could find something else about this game. Serengetti is a cancelled simulation game in development by Massa Group for both the Xbox and PC in 2001. Massa Group was a really small company at the time the game was in development, and it was quite an ambitious project for them. In Serengetti, you were a wildlife photographer and specialist working on the plains. You'd have to protect the animals from poachers while exploring. The game had an AI engine, attempting to create a working ecosystem of sorts. Animals would have motives and move and react to things in different ways. After some time, Massa Group transitioned their development team into Oiko Entertainment, so they could keep their focus on Serengetti while the rest of the company could work on other simulation software. Someone was also able to find a press release from NatFX, a 3D modeling software that said this about Serengetti. Serengetti's numerous missions intertwine the player with the life of the park, from capturing sick animals, to recuperating the park's tourism industry, to tracking rare animals and neutralizing poachers, mercenaries, and even kidnappers. Serengetti's gameplay is essentially founded on the near-perfect representation of the natural world. The ability to hide behind bushes, tall grass, take cover in groves, and behind tall trees demonstrates the vital importance and direct implication vegetation plays in Serengetti. The vegetation is more than just scenery, it's really something that serves a purpose in terms of gameplay. Set to release in the beginning of 2004 on PC and Xbox, Serengetti will certainly be a first of its kind. Set in Africa, it is an opportunity to use an original universe different from the usual ultra-realistic war games which typically occur in similar settings. Unfortunately, the game was never picked up by any publisher, despite the success it could have been. The game was in its alpha stage when production stopped, and it's assumed that it was sold off after Massa Group closed Oiko Entertainment. Before Quantic Dream became insanely popular due to their PlayStation games, ones like Heavy Rain and Beyond Two Souls being some of my favorites, they wanted to release games for many different consoles. They announced some projects that never end up releasing: Quark, Omicron 2, and the subject of this entry, Blast. Blast was the one with the most mystery around it, with little info and 2 images of questionable quality. It's thought that the game was supposed to be a Lovecraft meets Matrix type of game. Whatever that means. Blast only had a small number of people working on it. It's rumored that it was cancelled in favor of other projects. David Cage, founder of Quantic Dream, said in an interview, "We usually start several projects at the same time. Over the last few years, one of them got so much interest from publishers that we had to cancel or at least postpone the others. Each of Quantic Dream's projects requires up to 80 people and all of our attention. It's difficult to start several original projects with the same ambition and matter of quality." So, we only have 2 images, as I said, of Blast. But maybe we could learn more if someone knows how to get in touch with someone at Quantic Dream. So I'll remain hopeful for now. Project Velocity, also known as Octane, is a cancelled racing game in development by Visual Science. I couldn't find a time frame of its development, as there is little information about it, but GamerFreak1727 did leak some info about it when he found it on a debugged Xbox. It's rumored that it could have been a game for the Need for Speed franchise, but that's just speculation. I was able to find a download link for the Project Velocity prototype released by GamerFreak in 2006, and I'll leave a link for you guys to check it out if you want to. Cium is a cancelled adventure game that was in development by Fassa Studio and Microsoft Game Studios in the early 2000s. While we only have concept art of the game, I think it looked awesome. It was cancelled very early into production, unfortunately, and no other details are known at this time. One person on Unseen64 said about the game, "Would have loved to see how this concept art translated to 6 to visuals. There are some damn stunning locales in OG Xbox games. This could have been a very pretty game indeed. This could have been a killer Xbox IP back when Microsoft needed them the most." I do think Fassa did a bang-up job on the OG Xbox since I love Mech Assault 2 and Crimson Skies. But man, after seeing this and G, they really should have expanded the studio correctly so they could take on more projects. It sucks that both of these titles never got made. And I can't help but agree. It's sad to see such cool projects get cancelled and ultimately forgotten about. I maybe should have put this one further down the list since it is another Fassa Studios game and I just talked about Cium, but oh well, it's too late now. So let's talk about G, which I also mentioned. God, I suck at this sometimes. It is a hoverbike racer that was being worked on between 2002 and 2003. And it's not known why it was cancelled, but it's assumed that Fassa wanted to work on larger projects at the time. All we have is some video for G, and I think this game, like Cium, would have been really cool if they were given a chance. One comment on this Fassa game summed up my feelings about this game better than I could ever explain it, so excuse me for using comments in 2 consecutive entries. Anyways, Jay on Unseen64 said, "I love the looks of this one, it's so 2000s, and not in a sad, outdated way. Now, in 2021, the idea of the future is lame. It's just digital ecosystems, mega corporations, and debt that's paralyzing younger generations. In 2000, the new millennium, of course, we would have hover bikes and racing leagues built around them. The sky was the limit. I miss games like this. This is certainly reminiscent of many extreme future sports games, but I can't really think of anything with hover sleds like this. Hover vehicles like in Quantum Redshift or Fatal Inertia, sure. Bikes from Extreme G or Powerdrome, that's closer, but not like these. And neither of those games had stunt systems. I really like the mix of futuristic hover vehicles and SSX-style stunting. You just know this would have had a neat licensed soundtrack and would have been a great time, you know? I love Mech Assault too, but it's kind of a shame that FASA can never get this finished in my opinion. Infiltrator Shadow Wars. It is an adventure MMO in development by Orbital Frog Productions, set to be their first title. According to HWSW, a Hungarian IT website, it was going to be very immersive with a large combat system with around 150 special abilities and an ever-changing environment that you must adapt to. They even got to talk to Tom Mogg, which, if that's not how you pronounce your last name, I am so sorry, CEO of Orbital Frog, and he said about the game, "We are trying to create an environment of the game that is reminiscent of James Bond movies. We at Orbital Frog grew up on James Bond, Mission Impossible, and The Avengers. From these movies, we used the best details to make the game." The author of this article seemed hopeful about the game, even though they didn't have any images or footage to look at, and talked about seeing more about it at E3 in 2000, which didn't happen. It's not known what caused Infiltrator Shadow Wars' cancellation, but we at least have some concept art to know it was real. Ken Levine, creative director of Irrational Games, now known as Ghost Story Games, had a pretty destructive game idea in the early 2000s, it being Monster Island. The developers described it as Rampage meets black and white creatures in a fully destructible environment. In-game, you could be the monster trying to destroy the city, or the group of people aiming to stop you and protect humanity. It wasn't until 2010 that we knew about the project from the developers themselves on their blog, when they said, "The monster's goal is to cause as much destruction as possible, while simultaneously quelling its own hideous appetite with tasty human morsels. The monster might also receive unique goals in a particular mission, such as climbing a skyscraper, locating an enemy hidden in the city and destroying him, or defeating a rival monster. Monster Island will also let the player take on the role of the good guys, protecting the city from the horrible creature. The player will have control of 5 key units: the scientist, who gathers information on the monster to help defeat the behemoth, the girl, who can lure the monster away from its intended target, the engineer, who can direct the rebuilding of the city, the general, who can direct the forces of the army fighting the monster, and the hero, who can personally fight the monster when the going gets desperate." Monster Island was even set to have a 1 to 4 multiplayer function that allowed monsters to fight head-to-head. Ghost Story Games had $2.5 million to develop the game, and when listing what consoles they were releasing for it, they said, "Undetermined console, primarily a publisher irrational business decision. Xbox is probably the easiest, PS2 is a pain in the butt, and who knows about GameCube." While the 3-page PDF on the game is very detailed and makes the game sound fleshed out, we only have 3 images of Monster Island. Terrasaur: Dawn of Destruction is a cancelled action-adventure game by Atomic Planet for the Xbox, GameCube, and PS2 in 2002. You would play as a pterosaur, like the name, trying to get fellow dinosaurs to follow you and escape extinction. The game seemed semi-complex, with the player having to recognize patterns of behavior between different dinosaurs and be able to fight larger carnivorous dinosaurs. While we have some concept art and even some gameplay footage, it's unknown what happened to Terrasaur. It's rumored that no publisher wanted it, and Atomic Planet went on to close in 2009. Some people have hope that a demo can be found, but I'm really not sure. It's been over 12 years since the company disbanded and even longer since the game was cancelled, so I just think that the odds are kind of low, but I respect those that have the drive to find it. Agent is yet another cancelled game by Angel Studios, or Rockstar, in development in 2003. Not much is known about it since it never had an official announcement, but it may be connected to the GTA series. It's also thought that the game was put aside to work on Red Dead Revolver. As far as content goes, we have 3 images and some footage, which seems to be a common trend in the games I've talked about here. Agent might have had a resurgence when Rockstar announced it was going to come out on the PS3, but I'm not sure if they are actually related. It was described as a game full of espionage and counterintelligence. However, it seemed to suffer the same fate as the original game. As years went by, less and less information was released, and Rockstar renewed the rights for Agent for the last time in 2016. Area 51 is a cancelled action game planned for the Xbox and PS2 by Midway Games West in 2000 and 2001, meant to be a sequel to the Atari games Area 51 from 1995. The development company closed down in 2003, and it seemed like another company, Midway Studios Austin, released a loosely related version of the game in a sequel, Black Site Area 51 in 2007. However, I've seen many comments debating on whether they are actually related or not. Most seem to think they are completely different projects. All we have of the original is some video footage, and while I wouldn't have played a game like this, there might be some that hope for it. Now, this one came as a total surprise to me, but Fear Factor was an unreleased minigame collection in development by Play Interactive in 2005. It was set to have 15 different games with both single and multiplayer modes. It's unknown how far the game was in development, but we do have a lot of concept art and gameplay footage. While I enjoyed the show, I honestly thought the game looked kind of lame. It's just my opinion. That's all. While doing more research on the game, I learned that this was actually a port of the Game Boy Advance game. It seemed that the original game suffered really negative reviews, and that could be why the Xbox and PS2 ports wound up cancelled. Campfire Become Your Nightmare is a self-described reverse survival horror by Daydream Software in 2003. It's said to be open-ended, but with the player having the role of the villain hunting down campers. It says in the official press release, "What if you were the hunter instead of the hunted? What if your sole purpose in life was to cause misery, death, and pain to anyone and anything you encountered? Now you have your chance." So begins Daydream Software's brutal reverse survival horror game, Campfire. Based on contemporary slasher fix, Campfire allows players to choose from 4 different serial killers: Vincent Voucher, Mac Douglas, Louis Winterstorm, and Manny the Clown, so that they may use them to wreak havoc on the unsuspecting populace of an out-of-the-way campground. Campfire never had an official announcement, and it's not known what happened to cause its cancellation. But we do have some concept art and maybe a teaser. I thought the game looked really cool, and it's a shame it was never released. It may have been controversial though, so maybe the developers were worried about releasing such a polarizing game. And the fact that there are always people trying to find a reason to blame video games for real-life acts, which is ridiculous. But it's okay. I won't rant more about that, because this is a list video. Wild Justice was a first-person shooter set in a western town developed by Prima Thrive Studios sometime between 2002 and 2003 for the Xbox and PS2. Unfortunately, Wild Justice, along with all of Prima Thrive's projects, went unreleased and they eventually closed down. While we have some images in a teaser trailer, who knows what this game could have been. Some compare it to another horror western released in 2005, Dark Watch. Fallout Extreme is a cancelled shooter by 14 Degrees East, a subset of Interplay. The game was worked on for many months in 2000, but the team was never solid and seemed to end up forgotten about. After that, they attempted Fallout Brotherhood of Steel 2, which suffered the same fate. We can find a brief summary of Fallout Extreme on their Wikia, which says, the game could be played in first and third person perspective. The player would control a 4-person team and would be able to switch the active character, all of which had various skills at any moment. The team could consist of ordinary wastelanders, former Brotherhood of Steel members, super mutants, Native American shamans, and even Mongol warriors. There were both single and multiplayer modes. Not much is known about the development team. Brian Christian, head of 14 Degrees East, was the lead producer, while Todd J. Kamasta was the art director, like with Fallout Tactics. The only thing we have of the game is 3 pieces of concept art, while Brotherhood of Steel has more images out, but that was set to release on the PS2, so I won't ramble on about that one. Slipshot was a promising platformer for Electronic Arts in 2001, set to start a new franchise, but for some reason they broke up the team and it went unreleased. The main character was known as Buggy, and the first version had him as a pizza delivery bug in a human world, with a segue and him trying to save his love interest. While that sounded, interesting enough, I guess, the game went on to change many times. One of the last changes we know was that Buggy was in a normal-sized world for him, but took place in a tree stump. It's said that one level was complete, but EA decided to cancel the game after it had changed so many times. I can't imagine how costly it must have been for the development team. We do have concept art that shows the many changes, but the video I found on the Unseen64 article doesn't seem to be available. Neverland Saga is a Spectral Force card game in development by Idea Factory and XPEC Entertainment in 2001. The game went unreleased for unknown reasons. I wasn't able to find much in this game at all. Neverland Saga Zero was thought to be connected, but it ended up a different game entirely. The one good thing is we have some stills and some footage, and I know there must have been people who would have enjoyed it, even though it's not for me. Milo and the Rainbow Nasties is a cancelled platformer by Warthog Games in 2004. It was set in a world without any color, and the main character Milo and his chameleon friend Camille were tasked with bringing it back. Now, can anyone guess what game I'm thinking about here? While it was set to come out on the Xbox, PS2, and GameCube, it was changed to the Gizmondo, a console I'd literally never heard of, which may or may not have led to its cancellation. Or it may have been the closure of Warthog in February of 2006. One comment details more about the game, but I can't confirm whether information is true or not. They said, the main character is, of course, named Milo, the brown-haired kid, a happy-go-lucky whose unnamed little sister is kidnapped by Dr. Polymer, that big blue octopus thing. To further complicate things, Dr. Polymer has tried to absorb all the color with the use of the evil hand of darkness from Milo's world to use it on his own world. Milo would gain help from a magical chameleon named Camille, who has the ability to squirt color. Intended to be a kid's game, it's supposed to tutor players on geometry and color, since you make Milo create and mix colors and create geometric shapes. He also gains several abilities over the course of the game, which can be reused if you replay the game. Also, because of its kidified nature, it is supposed to have relatively forgiving gameplay and a learning curve. There's much action, exploration, and puzzle elements to be had. Many people compare the game to Super Mario Sunshine, which I can definitely see, but I also thought of Epic Mickey. Epic Mickey I know came later and there's probably no connection, but someone can dream. And Epic Mickey also has lost media attached, and I talked about it in my Disney video. So if you want to, I recommend you go watch the Disney video. It's one of my earlier ones though, so it might not be the best thing ever, but that's okay. Style Laboratory was a cancelled game for the Xbox Original in 2000 by Watermarks Ltd. While the game was seen at Tokyo Game Show in 2001, it might have been cancelled due to the low sales of the Microsoft console in Japan. There is little info about the game, but we at least know that the player would have been an upcoming fashion designer working to be the next best thing in the fashion world. We do have some concept art and a teaser, but I am not surprised that this one was cancelled. I and one other commenter seem to agree that the game looked kind of boring. There are 25 lost but mostly cancelled Xbox games. Now, I've had some people in my comments come and say that cancelled games don't count as lost media, but I don't know how to really respond to this because I am not a fighter in any sense. But if we don't have the game physically in some kind of release, or there's little information out there, then wouldn't it be considered lost? I don't know. I don't want to argue with anybody, but I'm just trying to make sense of what they're trying to say. I really don't know. Anyways, I honestly loved finding the games for this video, so expect more lost games for other consoles. Let me know which of these is your favorite or ones I might have missed. I know there are literally tons of them out there. I also wanted to thank my friend for some of the music in today's video. And if y'all like experimental rock meets metal music, I highly recommend his band Natural Graffiti. I'll leave a link down below for y'all. Also, I got approved for channel memberships. They're only $2.99 and you can get access to videos before anyone else and some emotes to use if you want. And of course, other perks. If you don't want to join or you can't, don't worry about it. Just seeing y'all watch and engage with my content is enough for me, and I appreciate you all. Anyways, I won't keep rambling on, so I'll probably just leave it here for today. But I hope you guys have a fantastic day.